Finding an ancient object is only half of an archaeologist's job. Then the hard part begins, explaining what this thing was needed for and who made it. Sometimes neither the one who dug it up nor the colleagues to whom they run for help have an answer. And sometimes it is not an object that disappears, but a whole city, or a submarine, or a painting worth $300 million that was kept behind a sofa for 30 years. Everything that will be discussed next are real finds, nothing invented. Some of them are still not explained, some were explained in a way that it would be better if they were not. And at the very end there will be a story after which you want to tap the walls of your own apartment. Watch until the very end. In Bangladesh, there is the Goinda temple, and archaeologists have a constant awkwardness with it. Half of the building is a Hindu temple of the 6th century. The second half is also a temple, but of the 11th. There are 500 years between them. Moreover, the later part is built not just anyhow and not as a patch. It was built exactly as a continuation of the old one, fitting it to it. Someone came to this place 5 centuries later and decided that the building needed to be completed. The masonry is heterogeneous, the levels do not match. Part of the foundation looks as if it is from another building altogether, on top of which all this was erected. One find put an end to the dispute. A terracotta head of a bodhisattva, a Buddhist image dating to approximately the 4th century, was found in the ground here. There are 2 options, and both are uncomfortable. Either the head was buried 200 years after it was made, that is, someone brought an old shrine to the construction site and intentionally laid it in the foundation, or people came to pray on this piece of land already in the 4th century, 200 years before the oldest of the temples known to us. And if the second is true, then we simply have not found the lower layer yet. Where this building actually begins is a question without an answer. By the year 1944, the Eastern Front was moving in one direction, to the west. The Germans were retreating. Hitler refused to retreat, but understood perfectly well. The equipment that is abandoned goes to the enemy. Germany had submarines left on the Black Sea. How they ended up there is a separate story. The sea is closed, the straits were controlled by Turkey, and the submarines were simply brought there. They were disassembled, dragged over land and rivers, and then assembled anew. Hitler was not going to give them to the Soviet fleet. He ordered 3 submarines to be scuttled, simply sent to the bottom, to return for them later. Later did not happen. Germany lost. The submarines remained lying there, and the name stuck to them: Hitler's Lost Fleet. They lay for more than half a century until a team of divers found all 3 off the Turkish coast. One not far from Agva, the other 2 closer to Istanbul. And here is what makes the find truly valuable. The submarines were scuttled in an organized manner, battened down. This means that inside all this time stands a sealed year 1944. Instruments, documents, personal belongings of the people who went out on deck and never returned there. If the holes are indeed hermetic, not scrap metal awaits the historians, but a time capsule. A small digression while we move on. Everything that sounds here is verifiable. Every find has a date, a point on the map, and the people who described it. No one woman told a friend. That is exactly why the goosebumps are real. What actually happened always works stronger than fiction. And the most uncomfortable story today is the one where a stranger lived inside the walls of an ordinary house. We will get to it. Lydia Korsanova, a teacher from Oktyabrski, kept a piece of a glassy mineral at home simply because it was beautifully translucent. The husband brought the stone, picked it up on a walk. The woman decided that it was an emerald, took it to appraisers, heard no, not an emerald, and put the find away on a shelf. There it lay for 30 years. 3 decades later, Lydia still decided to find out what it was. The sample was sent to the Academy of Sciences in Moscow, and from there came an answer that no one expected. Specialists identified the stone as a fragment of the Tunguska meteorite. According to their conclusion, the largest of those ever found, possibly a part of the core itself. The Tunguska event is the 30th of June of the year 1908, a flash over the Siberian taiga, a blast wave that filled the forest over an area of more than 2,000 square kilometers. About 80 million trees lay in a fan shape from the epicenter. The power is estimated differently, from 10 to 15 megatons up to 50, but even the lower limit is hundreds of Hiroshimas. And here's the catch. For more than 100 years, expeditions combed the taiga and did not find a single undisputed fragment. The prevailing version is that the body was destroyed in the air entirely, to zero. That is precisely why the find on the teacher's shelf sounds almost impossible. The Academy of Sciences, according to reports, bought the stone for $3 million. And the dispute over what exactly stood in the woman's cabinet for 30 years has not subsided to this day. Chris Scott from Middlesbrough started a renovation and at the same time decided to deal with the garden. In the garden there was a sewer manhole, one of those that half the houses have and that no one ever looks at. Chris pried open the cover. Under it was a ladder. He went down, shined a light, and realized that he was standing in a concrete room that is not in any document for his house. 2 rooms, a table, chairs, wiring, and simple electrics. There is enough space for 50 people at the same time. This is a bomb shelter. Judging by the size, they built it not for one family, but for the whole block. Neighbors were supposed to run here at the alarm signal. Then the need fell away. The entrance was closed with a cover. Those who knew about it grew old and moved away. The houses changed owners, and the shelter simply fell out of the street's memory. A whole room underfoot and not a line in the papers. Chris found a use for it immediately. Constant coolness, darkness, concrete, no vibrations, and no light. An ideal wine cellar. If you have a manhole in your yard under which you have never looked, today is an excellent day to take a look. Rome, the year 2018. They are laying line C of the subway. The bucket rests against something hard, and the work stops. Under the street turned out to be a house. Not a small room, not a foundation, a mansion with 14 rooms, the likes of which have been found in Rome itself only a counted number of times. The floors are marble over mosaics. In the courtyard is a fountain. In one of the rooms is a heating system. Hot air was let under the floor, and the stone remained warm in January. The 2nd century of our era. Judging by the layout, a military commander lived here. The strangest thing is not the luxury. Usually ancient buildings go underground by themselves, layer by layer, century by century. This house was not covered by time. It was buried, entirely and clearly intentionally. No one knows the reason. Neither a fire, nor a riot, nor a flood left any traces. The irony is that exactly this saved it. The earth lay like a preservative, and the mosaics reached us as if they were laid during the last generation. And then, the harsh truth of construction. The subway had to be delivered by the year 2022, and no one was going to move the deadlines. Archaeologists worked for speed. They photographed, documented, took what they had time for. Part of the floors were promised to be left in place, integrated into the new station. That is, people will stand on the marble of the 2nd century and wait for the train. Southern Laos, Champasak Province. Among the ruins of the Wat Phu Temple complex lies a flat block of stone with a hewn depression. The outlines vaguely resemble a crocodile, hence the name, although if you approach from the other side, a human figure with outstretched arms is read just as convincingly. And right here, the uncomfortable part begins. The temple itself was built in approximately the 12th century. The stone is older. Perhaps it has been lying here since the 5th, and the 5th century in these places is the time of the Chenla Empire. About its rulers it is known from written sources. Human sacrifices were practiced by them. Then logic takes a step that one really wants to take and that an honest archaeologist will not take. A flat slab. A depression where liquid could flow. An era in which people were sacrificed. Everything fits, but fits and is proven are different things. The depression could just as well have collected rainwater for a ritual ablution. Sometimes a strangely shaped stone is just a strangely shaped stone. But one detail gives no peace. Neither in Laos nor in neighboring Cambodia is there anything similar. Not a single second such stone for 2 countries, which means someone hewed it for one specific task and took the knowledge about it with them. When a rocket is launched, the trajectory is calculated in advance and very carefully. The spent stages should fall into the ocean or into an unpopulated steppe, but not on people. On the 11th of October of the year 2018, it did not work. At the launch of Soyuz MS-10, a side block of the first stage failed. There were 2 on board, Alexei Ovchinin and Nick Hague, and then everything was decided by automatics. The emergency rescue system was triggered, the capsule was led to the side, and it went down along a ballistic trajectory. These are G-forces of under 7 units, 7 times the weight of one's own body, pressing a person into the seat. The crew survived and landed in the Kazakh steppe. Rescuers reached them in a matter of hours, but the rocket itself was lost. The debris was scattered over a huge territory, and some of them were never found. Hunters found them. People said that at night they heard a roar, and then stumbled in the forest near a swamp upon a structure that should not be there. The exact location was not disclosed, but photographs and videos were enough to confirm their every word. There is something very earthly about this. A space program, thousands of engineers, calculations to fractions of a second, and a lost piece is found by a person who is simply walking through the forest with a rifle. A grandson came to help his grandmother sort through things before moving. They opened the garage, and there, under a layer of dust, was a low, wedge-shaped silhouette. The grandson looked closely and sat down. In the garage stood a Lamborghini Countach, the very one, with doors going up, a poster of which hung in every second teenager's room in the 80s. The market price of such a car is about $500,000. It had not driven out of there for more than 20 years. The story turned out to be simple and a bit sad. The guy's grandfather in the 80s was going to open a dealership for expensive cars. He bought the first cars, started calculating, and ran into insurance. Insuring such a fleet turned out to be more expensive than he could afford. The venture was folded, and the already bought cars were driven into the garage until better times. Better times did not come. The grandfather passed away, the family remembered about the garage, but no one seriously looked in there. And that is not all that stood behind the dusty tarp. Next to the Countach, a forgotten Ferrari 308 was discovered. The grandmother, of course, suspected nothing. An object the size of a palm cast from bronze and in shape exactly a piece of meat, a pork ham with a protruding bone. Exactly this was raised from volcanic ash in the 60s of the 18th century when they were excavating a Roman villa buried by the eruption of Vesuvius in the year 79. For 200 and something years, no one could say why a Roman needed a bronze chop. The solution came only in the year 2017, and it came from a 3D printer. Scientists printed an exact copy, the original is too fragile to twirl it in one's hands, and began to turn this copy in the light. The shadow explained everything. The protruding bone turned out not to be a decoration, but a gnomon, a rod that casts a shadow. The object was hung on a cord, turned to the sun, and the shadow fell on a grid of lines carved right over the meat. The vertical lines are months, the horizontal ones are hours. The owner cast a glance at his bronze ham and understood how much of the daylight he had left. A pocket sundial, 2,000 years ago, in a pocket. Only one thing does not add up. If the Romans carried such things with them, why during all the years of excavations was not a single second one found? Neither in Pompeii nor in Herculaneum, nowhere. Either this was a one-of-a-kind thing, made to order for one very non-poor person, or we still have not understood what we are looking at. Swedes from the mainland will tell you directly, it is better not to poke your nose onto Blå Jungfrun. The island is cursed. Witches gathered there. It is often identified with the legendary Blåkulla, the mountain of the Sabbath. Not a single local will take away even a pebble as a souvenir from there. Archaeologists who nevertheless landed and climbed into the caves found traces that are 9,000 years old. Not 900. 9,000 is the Mesolithic, a time when the glacier was still melting in Scandinavia. In one cave stands a stone altar. In another, a flat cleared area, which the researchers themselves call a stage. An approach is made to it as if on purpose. Next to the stage lay grinding stones. Something was ground with them. What exactly has not been established. But the set itself, an altar, a platform, tools for grinding, reads as a place where something was performed, regularly, seriously. Also on the island, there is a labyrinth laid out of stones. What for is unknown. And here is what is indicative. The labyrinth lies openly. Take the stones and carry them away. For all the years, not a single one has gone missing. According to legend, the one who moves the stone releases the curse to the outside. And there have been no volunteers to test this so far. In the giant caverns on the shore, the locals explain simply, they were hollowed out by giants. With this, the archaeologists are ready to argue. In the Indian state of Kerala stands the Padmanabhaswamy Temple. It has 6 underground vaults. 5 have been opened. The 6th, marked with the letter B, has never been opened. About what is inside, all sorts of things are told. Ropes woven from pure gold, belts made entirely of diamonds, emeralds the size of a fist, barrels of coins, even a collection of Napoleon's coins. According to temple legend, the doors are unlocked by a special chant, and the text of this chant is known by no one living. Then begins the part that is no longer a legend. In the year 2011, a court ordered an inventory of the remaining vaults. What was found was valued at sums in the order of $20 billion. Golden statues, bags of coins, jewelry accumulated over centuries, and it is believed that the most valuable things lie precisely behind that door which was not touched. On the doors of the vault, two huge cobras are carved. They are read as a warning. In the year 1931, an expedition nevertheless tried. The work was folded on the same day. Snakes crawled out at the people from under the doors or from behind them. The witnesses were confused. Real ones, alive. Since then, almost a century has passed, and more surprising than the locked door itself is that there have been no volunteers to try again. At the bottom off the coast of the English county of Kent lies the Dutch ship Rooswick. It sank in the year 1740 on the Goodwin Sands, a shoal that over the centuries has swallowed thousands of ships. In the hold there was silver, coins and ingots, and besides silver, thimbles. A lot of thimbles. The cargo was raised in the year 2018, and here an unpleasant thing became clear. For almost 300 years the metal became overgrown with concretions, a crust of rust, sand and shells as hard as concrete. Inside these shapeless lumps there is something. What exactly is not visible. In June of the year 2020, the Wolfson Foundation allocated $168,000 to the Center for Archaeological Analysis in Fort Cumberland. The money went to new generation X-ray machines, those whose beam pierces this armor and shows what is under it. They were looking for one specific detail: holes in the coins. The matter is this. The import of coins into Batavia, the Dutch colony in the East Indies, was forbidden. They were protecting the local economy, but money was still brought there. It is believed that passengers simply sewed the silver into their clothing. They punched a small hole in the coin and sewed it on like a button. If the X-ray shows these small holes, the version about smuggling will be confirmed not by a historian's reasoning, but by physical evidence that has lain underwater for almost 3 centuries. Belize, Orange Walk District. In the year 1975, British archaeologist Norman Hammond found a settlement here and dug it up then for 5 years in a row. It is called Quello. There are no pyramids here, no palaces. This is not a ceremonial Maya city, but a village. People grew corn, lived in huts under thatched roofs, hunted the white-tailed deer and kept dogs. Everyday life, not grandeur. And then Hammond sent samples for radiocarbon analysis and the scientific world reared up. The numbers said the settlement is more than 4,500 years old. That is, the Maya lived here millennia earlier than was generally considered possible. Later, the datings were revised and shifted closer to us. The dispute dragged on for years and is not finally closed to this day. But archaeologists became truly uncomfortable not from the numbers. The burial customs of Quello do not match what is known about other Maya settlements. And among the burials, they found a teenage girl. They chopped off her head, and then they laid the body and put the head on top, on the chest. They placed 2 bowls nearby. Who she was, a victim, punished, someone special, is unknown. Something else is known. The one who buried her did not rush and did not do a sloppy job. He did everything exactly the way he considered correct. Northern Saudi Arabia, Al Jaf province. In the middle of the desert stand stone remnants, and on their sheer sides, animals in natural size are carved. Camels, horses, donkeys, carved in such a way that the musculature and the set of the head are visible by the hand of a person who knew these animals very closely. They were not noticed until the year 2016. How is it possible not to notice reliefs the height of a human growth? Easy. The desert moves. Dunes crawled onto the rocks and left, crawled on and left. The sand hid the carving from eyes and at the same time saved it from the wind. First, the age was estimated at approximately 2,000 years. Then they took up the tool marks, the character of weathering, the erosion of the chips, and the number shifted. Not by centuries. New estimates push these reliefs back 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. Think about it. This is older than Stonehenge, older than the Egyptian pyramids, older than writing as such. And the coldest detail? There is no settlement around. No dwellings, no garbage pits, no abandoned tools. Someone came into the emptiness, hewed the rock for months, left a gallery that survived millennia, and left, without leaving a single clue about himself. On the eastern bank of the Nile, in northern Sudan, stands a city without inhabitants. Old Dongala. Today, only an archaeological expedition works there. It arrived in the year 1964 and, in essence, did not leave. From the 4th to the 14th century, this was the capital of Makuria, a Nubian Christian kingdom that held the defense for centuries against all neighbors. And then the inhabitants got up and left. New Dongala was founded approximately 80 kilometers down the river. Usually such a thing has an explanation, and this explanation is noticeable. War leaves ashes, collapsed walls, and arrowheads in the masonry. A flood leaves silt. An epidemic leaves mass graves. In Old Dongala, there is none of this. The city is intact. People simply ceased to be in it. And this is still not the whole strangeness. Judging by the Book of Knowledge, a Spanish geographical work where the city is mentioned, by the year 1348, there were no locals here anymore, and Genoese merchants had settled in the empty houses, aliens from the other end of the Mediterranean Sea. Then they left too. Two different peoples, two waves, and neither left a single line about why they were leaving. In the desert in the south of Peru, in the Palpa region, on a gentle slope, lies a drawing about 75 meters long. It is an orca, a killer whale with a characteristic spot near the eye. The geoglyph lay open for no less than 2,000 years. It is visible from the air without any equipment, and they lost it. In the 70s, an airplane passed over this place and someone took a picture. The photograph was put away in the archive. What exactly was on it and where it is located, the person who shot it did not understand, did not write down the coordinates. And the Palpa region is a wilderness even by Peruvian standards. There are thousands of slopes there. The image was searched for anew for almost half a century and returned to people only by the year 2017. It did not become clearer from this. It is known that for the ancient Peruvians, the orca was an almost divine creature, the strongest predator of the ocean who was feared and revered simultaneously. A figure of such size laid out on the slope manually most likely was an appeal, a request, or a payment, and to read it more accurately, the one who drew it is needed. He has not been there for 20 centuries already. If we assume that the history of computing technology begins with the abacus, then the first personal computer looked like this, a ring. An ordinary-looking ring that was worn on the finger in Qing Dynasty China about 300 years ago. Only this is not a decoration. On the ring is an abacus, a real working one. Rows of beads, a crossbar, everything just like on a large abacus. The height is slightly more than 1 centimeter, and it calculates. It does not depict an abacus, but actually calculates. Any operation that can be done on a normal one is done here too, with one caveat. You will not get near it with your fingers. The beads are smaller than a match head. A needle was supposed to go with the ring, thin like a hairpin. That is what they moved it with. Merchants used this. The Chinese calculation on beads is called jushuan, and they possessed it at the level of a reflex. Numbers were added up faster than they are typed on a calculator today. The ring solved a very specific task. The buyer stands in front of you, bargains, waits for the price right now, and the full-sized abacus was left in the shop. You spun the needle a couple of times and named the sum. What delights here is not the idea, but the execution. To turn and assemble a mechanism of such a size, optics are needed. A microscope. In 18th century China. How they did this, no one knows. And there is an assumption that all known abacus rings came out of the hands of one single master. On the 31st of July of the year 1944, a reconnaissance aircraft took off from an airfield in Corsica, a Lockheed Lightning, a twin-boom machine with 2 engines. The task was simple, to pass over the French coast and photograph it. At the helm sat a man who was 44, by the standards of military aviation, almost an old man. He was allowed to fly with difficulty after long requests. His name was Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. A year earlier, he wrote a fairy tale about a boy from another planet and a lamb in a box. The Little Prince would disperse across the world in hundreds of millions of copies, would be translated into hundreds of languages, and would become one of the most published books in history. The airplane did not return. No wreckage, no body, no trace. Over half a century, so many versions accumulated that there would be enough for a separate film, both that he was shot down and that he himself went into the water, and that he did not crash at all. The sea gave the answer. In '98, a fisherman off the coast of Marseille pulled out a silver bracelet with the name of the writer and the name of his wife and his nets. A few years later, right there, at depth, they found the airplane itself. The wreckage was raised and confirmed in the year 2004. What happened in the air, the metal did not tell. No traces of battle were found on it, so the main question remained exactly where it was, at the bottom. David Mazurek, a farmer from Michigan, propped open a barn door with a piece of iron for 30 years. The piece was heavy, about 10 kilograms, and of a convenient shape. It held the sash dead fast, even in the wind. He got it together with the farm. The previous owner mentioned somehow in passing that this thing once fell from the sky, and on that the conversation ended. 30 years later, David accidentally stumbled upon advertisements. People were selling fragments of meteorites, and the fragments were noticeably smaller than what held his door. He got to thinking, loaded the piece of iron into the car, and took it to Central Michigan University. The reaction of the specialists was roughly like that of a child on New Year's morning. An alloy of iron with nickel, a characteristic internal structure, everything fits. A real meteorite, moreover a rare and large one. The estimate, up to $100,000. Since then, something else props up the barn door. Mazurek sold the stone and gave 1/10 of the proceeds to the university. To the very people who explained to him that for 30 years he had been kicking a piece of another world with his foot. One detail for perspective. Such iron is the same age as the solar system. It is about 4.5 billion years old. It is older than any stone you can pick up on the street. Jose Antonio Nieves was walking through the fields south of Buenos Aires, went down to the river and saw something dome-shaped, dark, and clearly out of size for a stone in the clay. He ran home to tell that he had found a giant dinosaur egg. He was not much mistaken. Sticking out of the bank was the shell of a glyptodon. A glyptodon is a prehistoric relative of the armadillo, only scaled up to absurdity. An adult individual weighed near a ton, and its shell was not a set of movable plates, but a solid bone dome, fused tightly together. Jose's find is comparable in dimensions to a passenger car. Imagine an armadillo the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. That is approximately how it looked in life. The armor was needed not for beauty. In that same South America lived saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears, larger than any current predator. Against such teeth, a dome of bone worked. Glyptodons died out more than 10,000 years ago, at the same time when the rest of the local megafauna disappeared, and judging by everything, not without the participation of people who by that time had already reached South America. Glyptodon bones are found regularly in Argentina. This is not a rarity. The rarity is to find a shell of such size and in such preservation that it can be read entirely. Because of the walk of one person, the province got an exhibit that they talked about for months afterwards. A pile of iron in the yard is an understandable thing. Spare parts, hands do not reach to it. Someday it will come in handy. It is much stranger to find out that your pile of iron is a Soviet T-54 tank. Exactly such a disassembled machine was found in a yard in Varnita. The T-54 was produced from the year 46 to the year 59. It weighs about 36 tons, and in the army it was loved exactly for what mechanics love equipment for. It worked. Such a successful design that in some places in the world these tanks are still in service today. The machine is approaching 80 years and it is in the ranks. How one of them ended up disassembled in a private yard exactly no one knows. The main version is everyday and very logical. The army decommissioned the machine, a local resident bought it or bartered for it, removed the turret and got a tractor of incredible power to plow, drag logs, pull out stuck trucks. A military unit was stationed in the village until the 80s, so there was an occasion to make a deal. The question that arises for everyone, will it drive again if assembled? Considering that this diesel was designed to be repaired in the field with a sledgehammer and a wrench, it is quite possible that it will drive. In a house in Brooklyn, a canvas was pushed behind the sofa for many years. The reason is purely practical. The children played tennis right in the room. The ball had already hit the painting once and left a mark, so they removed it from sight so that it would not get it again. The Kober family loved the painting but did not take it seriously. A copy hangs, pleasant, old, who knows how many of those there are. In the year 2003, Martin Kober retired from the US Air Force and he got free time. He began to look into the family history and unraveled a chain 5 centuries long. According to the version of Antonio Forcellino, a historian and specialist on Michelangelo, this is an authentic, unfinished work of the master, considered lost. painted as a gift to a friend of the artist. From there it went to a Catholic cardinal, from him to a German baroness. She gave it to her favorite lady-in-waiting. The lady-in-waiting was the sister-in-law of Martin's great-grandfather. That is how the canvas entered the family and gradually lost all status in it. The estimates that are named reach up to $300 million. Some art historians do not agree with the attribution. The dispute is still going on. With things of such a level, it does not happen otherwise. The painting, of course, is no longer placed behind the sofa. It lies in a bank vault. Talk that part of the Nazi elite dissolved into the South American jungles after the year 45 has been going around for decades. The evidence for these talks is usually exactly zero. And then a group of researchers climbed into the forest in the north of Argentina, not far from the Paraguayan border, and found ruins among the thickets, stone buildings about which no one in the district really knew anything. By themselves, ruins in the selva are not a sensation. Questions began with the details. First, the walls. About 3 meters thick. This is not a house. This is how a fortification calculated for a siege is built. Second, the architecture. It does not look like anything Argentine. Third, and most unpleasant, inside lay German coins, minted between the years 38 and 41, and shards of porcelain of the Meissen manufactory, the oldest and most recognizable in Germany. That is, someone transported across the ocean not only themselves but also dishes. The leader of the excavations, to his credit, refrained from loud conclusions and warned himself. The buildings may turn out to be much earlier, of the times of Jesuit missions, and the things could have gotten there later and by chance. So the honest summary is this. Germans were in this forest at some point, this is established. Who exactly, when, and why is not. The hideout, which it seems was never used, stands in the thickets to this day. 2 teenagers were messing around in their parents' bedroom, pushed each other, and both crashed into the bookcase. The bookcase slid. Behind it was not a wall. Behind it was a passage. The boys climbed inside and found a ladder. The ladder led up and rested against a blank wall, a dead end, an unfinished job by the builders. Nothing interesting, so it seemed to them, until one noticed a manhole right near the floor. Narrow, low, neatly made. To get inside, you have to crawl. They crawled. What opened inside was worse than any dead end. Candy wrappers, their own candies, the very ones they collected for Halloween, and which were gradually disappearing somewhere from the cupboard. A key from it is not clear what, and dolls set up along the wall. Then a very simple picture forms, and all the heaviness is in this simplicity. The wrappers were fresh. This means that a person lived here not in the last century, but right now. Behind the drywall, a meter from the beds, heard conversations, knew the daily routine of the family, went out when the house emptied, took food and returned back. The police arrived. The passage was examined, the things were confiscated, but it was not possible to establish who it was. No name, no fingerprints, no tracks that led anywhere. The family sealed up the manhole on the same day. And if it ever seemed to you that you are not alone at home, remember this story. Sometimes it does not seem so. Write in the comments, subscribe to topfacts for the most incredible collections of facts and videos from all over the internet. Thank you for watching, and right now click on one of our previous episodes.